Welcome to episode 2 of Storytime with the Dangerous Gentleman. And yes, I am the Dangerous Gentleman, and no, I did not give myself that nickname, but I'm pretty sure I did earn it. In the last story episode, I was sharing about kind of the situation that got me to where I am now and how I ended up in Yakima, Washington, and the situation and everything kind of around that. So this time around, I kind of want to share some stories that took me from that place to where I am now, to where I have a pretty doggone good life that I really like. And so we're going to call this a series of fortunate occurrences. And to start off with, I want to let you know that I don't really believe that anything happens by chance. I believe that the stories that I share happened as a result of, number one, God setting things up, because I believe that He is totally sovereign and He is in charge and He sets things up. But it's also a result of me making decisions and choices to follow a certain path, and then things lining up as a result of those decisions that I have made. So we're going to start with, when I first started here, I talked about how I worked at a chiropractic office. Well, a few months after I started working there, a massage therapist started working there too. His name was Jamie. Really cool guy. I still know him, still hang out with him on occasion. But one day, he'd invited me to go with him and his wife and a couple other people to go to the gym. I need to back up a little bit on that, because I've gone to the gym off and on for years, right? I kind of would just go to the gym, and was always trying to just burn calories. I was trying to burn calories so that I could make up for the fact that I wasn't eating very good. Okay? And I was just kind of going in there and doing whatever. So Jamie invites me, and first of all, they go at 5:30 in the morning. And at the time, I was not a real early riser. So he invites me to go with him at 5:30 in the morning. So that means I got to get up at around 5 in order to get there by 5:30. So I started to do that. And the first day I showed up, he's like, "Here, we're doing these exercises. We're doing these many sets and this many reps at this weight and da 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 da." He laid out this whole program, and he gave me a set of papers with exercises that we were doing, and everything was all laid out. And I was like, I've never really worked out like this before. So I started to do it regularly, consistently. I think we went 4 days a week. Okay. And after a couple of weeks, I started to feel comfortable with it, and I started to actually see a difference. When I started working out at that time, I weighed about 260. Okay. And I lost a little bit of weight, maybe 5 pounds, just from 5-10 pounds because of working out. And so after a couple of months, I was starting to see results. And I was like, oh, so this is what it looks like to be intentional when you're at the gym. This is actually really cool. I'm seeing results. So I kind of got motivated. Well, then he comes to me and he's like, so how about we take this to another level, and we add some proper nutrition in with all of that. Like, okay. And he issued a challenge. We're going to do 30 days, and we're going to follow this specific plan. This is what we're going to eat, this kind of protein, these kind of nutritional supplements, and yada, yada, yada. And so I started to do that. And so then I was combining good nutrition with a real legitimate workout plan. I started to see even more results, and I started to look at myself, and I was like, oh, I don't look like a fat, lazy blob anymore. Yeah, I still had plenty of weight to lose, but now I had lost about 20 pounds, maybe 25. So I was in like my mid 230s, and I was starting to feel really good. And so we got done with that 30-day challenge, And then he was like, we're going to do, I think it was an 80 or 100-day challenge. So I started that challenge and kept working out and started to really lose weight. And I think I lost weight all the way down to like 210. So I had lost about 50 pounds and I had built muscle. So I felt really good. And I was like, oh, this is what it really means to work out. I went from going to the gym to just kind of burn off my crappy diet to wanting to change the way I ate in order to enhance and maximize my effort in the gym, which is a big shift. And if any of you out there are wondering how to really get results, that's a big shift you need to make. And that is to go from going to the gym to just try to burn off calories, which you're never going to outwork a bad diet. But to go from being able to go to the gym and burning off calories just to burn off calories to actually going to the gym to try to get results. That was a big shift. After 6-8 months, I decided that I wanted to take things to a little bit different level even. And so I decided I would try out a local CrossFit gym. I had tried CrossFit years before, but I just never really got into it because I wasn't in any kind of shape, and I only went once or twice. And so I went and met some of the people that were there at the gym and really liked it. It was the most miserably wonderful experience I've ever had that first day. Because we were doing like sled pushes and push-ups and lifting weights, and we were giving it everything we had, but we were doing it as a group. So when you do that kind of thing as a group, when you suffer together, it builds camaraderie and you actually kind of enjoy it, and your body releases endorphins and all that stuff. And so since that day, that was in early 2018, I've been going to CrossFit consistently now for the last 6 years, and I have done things in there that I don't even know. I can't even explain to you, like the things that I used to not be able to do that I can do now. The amount of weight that I love lifting heavy weights. I realized how much joy and fulfillment it does for me to lift heavy weights. Squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, power cleans, pull-ups, all that kind of stuff. And it was going through that kind of methodology that got me to the place where I went to where I am now, which is I'm a complete and total gym rat. I'm at the gym pretty much every day and going hard. And I love it. And when I don't have my gym around, I miss it. I've become so much of a gym rat at the CrossFit gym. They actually gave me my own key, and they said you can come and go as you please, even when there's not class. And that's just an interesting place for me to be. I never would have imagined that. So that's fortunate occurrence 1. Number 2 happened a little over a year, maybe a year and a half after I moved to Yakima. And I had started to meet some people and different groups and churches and stuff like that. I also used to walk a lot. And I remember one day I was walking home from the office, and I stopped at this particular intersection on my way home, and I was waiting for the light, the walk signal to turn on. And the car that pulled up in front of me rolled down the window, waved, and said, "Hey." And I looked up, and it was someone that I knew. I don't remember who it was or where I knew them from, but it was someone that I knew. And so I waved back, and I was like, "Huh, that's cool." And then a couple cars later, it was someone else that I knew. And they honked their horn and waved, and I was like, I know that person too. That's pretty amazing. 2 people at the same intersection. Well, what do you know? 2 or 3 cars later, another person walks by or drives by and honks, and I wave at them. I'm like, 3 people at one light while I'm walking home? That just doesn't happen. And it was one of those moments where I went from, I moved to Yakima because I had no other place to go, to I moved to Yakima because this is where God wanted me. And I understood more and more that I had a purpose for being in Yakima. One intersection, three people that I knew. That never happened to me once when I was in Spokane, when I lived in Spokane. Now I didn't walk as much back then, but sometimes I would go days without seeing people that I knew other than my family. Right? So here I was, one walk home, one traffic light, three people I knew. And it just, Yakima started to feel like home at that point. So occurrence number 3 happened about 6 or 8 months after I moved here. Again, I already mentioned that I walk a lot. So I was walking through downtown Yakima across a crosswalk, and I hear a horn honk. And I turned around and looked, and I didn't see anyone that I knew, and I just kept walking. So I hear a honk again, and I turn around, and I look, and there's a guy sitting on a motorcycle who pops up the visor on his helmet and gives me this unmistakable smile, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Jared. Now, let me explain who Jared is. Jared, at the time, Jared was a guy that I had met back probably 20 years before that for the first time. And I went to Bible school with his brother. And so I knew his older brother, and I met him a little bit, and we kind of were kindred spirits, but we never really got to know each other that well. And then it was probably 15 to 20 years between the last time I saw him and this particular time. But there was no mistaking that smile that he gave me. I was like, it's Jared. It turns out that someone else that I had met, that I knew since I moved to Yakima, was renting Jared's basement apartment. And so I talked to that guy, and that guy got me in contact with Jared. So over the course of a few months, we exchanged maybe a dozen text messages, but nothing real significant. And then that around New Year's, like 2 or 3 days before New Year's that year, I get a phone call from Jared. Now, like I said, we've never actually talked on the phone. We've exchanged a few messages, but he calls me up. I'm at the office, and he's like, "What are you doing this weekend?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm here in Yakima, and I barely know anybody, so I don't know." He's like, "Well, do you want to come to this thing that I have going on?" And I thought about it, and like I said, I've known Jared at least a little bit, at least enough to know that if he's inviting me to go do something, that it's probably gonna be pretty cool. And I trust him, and I just know that he's a man of integrity. So I was like, okay, you have my interest. He's like, go to this store, rent a tuxedo, and then show up at this address tomorrow night at this time. Sounds mysterious, right? But again, I don't hardly know anybody in this town. And so something to do New Year's weekend with an invitation like that, who's going to say no? So that day at lunch, I drove down to the tuxedo shop, rented the only tuxedo they had in my size, and picked it up. And the next night, I showed up at this address to do this thing. And well, I walked in, and here's all of these young people. And when I say young, I mean I'm at the time I was, let's see, this was 2018, so I was like 42, 41, 42. And most of these people were late teens to mid 20s, maybe late 20s. I was the oldest person there. And I didn't know anybody except for Jared. And he was only there for a little while that night. So I'm sitting there meeting all of these people for the very first time. And they're all younger than me. And they all know each other. Most of them all know each other very well. So I'm this total fish out of water. So they start talking about what it is that they're doing, and they call it the banquet and ball. And I was like, okay. It's because back, let me rewind a minute. Where I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, we used to do an event like this. It was called the banquet and ball. I'll at some point I'll do an entire episode or two about the banquet and ball and my experiences there, but it's a pretty remarkable and can be a very life-changing experience for a young person. Well, Jared had been to a few of the ones where I grew up, and so he took this concept and he brought it back here to Yakima and started to implement it. He changed and tweaked some things, but he brought the general concept back here. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to see. Now I'm really intrigued. Go rent a tuxedo, show up at this address, and here's this thing. I am bought in now. A whole bunch of people I don't know, start to have some conversations with people, but I'm kind of an introvert. So I'm kind of getting to know people, but kind of also just sitting back and observing and stuff like that. So I go through the whole weekend. Well, actually, the next day, then, I believe it was the next day, we were all sitting, all the guys were sitting, and Jared was up giving a talk, and he starts to talk about these prior banquet and balls that he had been to. And he starts talking about this particular person who exhibited certain behaviors that he perceived to be very negative about pertaining to the spirit and the attitude and the intention of the ball. And my brain starts to turn. And I'm like, I think I know who he's talking about. It wasn't me, by the way. It wasn't me. But it was someone I know very well. So after the talk is done, Jared comes back and sits down next to me, and he again gets that cheesy look on his face. He's like, you know who I was talking about? And I looked at him and I said the name. I won't say the name here because this person still doesn't know that they're used in this way, that they're talked about in this way. But it was someone that I knew very well. And he's like, yep. Well, okay. I had my information. So now I'm getting even more and more hooked. I won't go into all the other details of that weekend. Needless to say, it was had a very dramatic impact on me. Not just the particular event, but getting plugged into that group of people since that day has had a more significant impact on me than just about any singular event that I've had. Because those people now, I attend church with them. I do community events with them. They are some of my closest friends in Yakima. Actually, some of my closest friends just in the world are those people that I met that night that I thought were crazy. And now they're some of the people who I interact with the most. We genuinely and wholeheartedly make a direct and lasting and very real impact on the community that we live in. And if I had not happened to be walking across that particular crosswalk on that particular day, I might not have ever connected with them, and who knows where my life would have ended up. But like I said before, I don't believe that these things happen by accident. I believe that God directly and supernaturally intervenes on the behalf of his people. I also believe that when we act with intention and when we hold certain thoughts in our mind, we are going to be drawn into circumstances that fit that intention, and we're also going to draw people to us that have a similar intention. I believe that we attract those kinds of things. Our intention attracts other people. And so when you combine your intention with God's sovereignty, amazing things happen. And those things don't happen. That's not an accident. Okay? So those are three big things that happened to me that have had a dramatic impact on me, going from a life where I had two suitcases and a backpack when I moved to Yakima, to now having built a life that I don't want to leave. I don't ever go hardly on vacation. I don't take days off other than to go visit my family because I miss my life, and I've spent so much time building a life that I love that I don't ever want to be away from it. I, I, I barely want to ever be away from it. That might change, but at this point, like, I don't want to spend my life, my days, my time doing things outside of this great life that I have from intention. So the guy that introduced me to the gym, right? So like the gym is a huge part of my life. The people I ran into at the intersection uh, helped reinforce the idea that I was in the right place. And then happening to be walking across that crosswalk and running into Jared again, who is now one of my closest friends, and has introduced me to a group of people that like to, and this is the term that we put on it, we like to fight evil. So all of that combined together has led to this life that I currently live right now. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of more stories about my time over the last 7 years that I've lived in Yakima. But that's just an introduction of how I got from where I was to where I am now. And if anyone listens to this, cool. If not, also cool, because I didn't record this for you. I recorded it for me, but I certainly hope that you do get something out of it. Have a wonderful day.